Good morning, friends. Welcome back to Aunt Debbie's Boutique. Once again, we are making holiday decor, and we are on Christmas right now. And the next thing we're going to make is a pot holder. Nothing says Christmas, to me anyway, like a star. This is called an Amish folded star. I believe that the Amish were the ones that originated this pattern by the name of it. That's all I can guess. So it is not an original pattern. There are other videos out there on how to do them, and I've watched a few of them, and everyone is a little bit different. And so I am going to show you how I do it, and you can either do it like me or do it like one of the others. But this is going to turn out real nice. I know that because I've already made one. So what we're going to need today is fabric that's going to be on the back of our pot holder. And I chose this silver on white, metallic silver on white piece. And you're going to cut that 9 inches square. We're going to need some binding for our pot holder, and that's just 2.5 inches by 1 width of your fabric. We're going to need something to hang our pot holder with, so this is 1 inch by 4 inches. Fold it in half, and then fold it in from each side. 1/4 inch, then fold it in half again, and we'll use that to hang it with. We're going to need a 9-inch square of Insulbrite or something similar. You can use batting if you want, and especially on this one you could use batting because this is a really thick pot holder when it's done. Actually, I use it more for a trivet than I do for a pot holder. So this will look real nice on your on your dining room table with a bowl of something setting on it. And you'll need some foundation fabric. I'm using a plain white here that we're going to attach all our pieces to, and that's also a 9-inch square. So all 3 of these are 9-inch squares. Then we're going to need about a 2-inch square, 2.5, 1.5, somewhere in there. I'll show you that one's just going to help things from not peeking through. And you'll need 4, 3.5-inch squares. That's going to be your first row in your star. And if you'll notice, I alternated light, dark, so that there's some real good contrast there. So these need to be of the same fabric. Okay. Then you're going to need 8 5-inch squares for the second row. You're going to need 8 5-inch squares for the third row, and then you're going to need 4 5-inch squares for your last row and 4 6-inch squares, because we're making a square pot holder, not a round one. If it were round, we could get by with all 5-inch squares. Okay, this is going to be more folding and ironing than it is going to be sewing. And to help us, I'm going to use this Sew Line glue stick. And you just turn it up, and these are our refills. And this is just going to help us hold it in place until we're ready to stitch everything. You can use this temporary spray. You could use the double-sided tape that we use for our zippers. You could use pins, but that's going to get kind of bulky and they're going to get in your way a little bit. So I recommend some sort of adhesive. There's other glues out there too that'll work. And this I'm going to use when we put our pot holder all together, but it is optional. Okay. The first thing we're going to need to do, I'm going to lay all this aside except for our foundation piece and all of our little squares. We're going to take our foundation piece and we're going to fold it in half. Remember, this is a 9-inch square. Iron it really good because you're going to need that crease. Then we're going to fold it in half again, so it's now 4. Another good ironing. And then we're going to iron it a 3rd time on the diagonal. I didn't get that quite like as good as I wanted there. Now then, when I open it up, I've got the bases for my star there, all even. And the first thing we're going to do is take our small square and we're going to put it in the center. And I'm just going to use a little bit of glue to do that. And center it as best I can. The whole purpose of this little square is as we add our folded triangles on top of it, this is in case something peeks through. If your first row was black and there was a little place that peeked through, you would see the white of this, and you wouldn't want that. So that's why you would put a black square here. Since our first row is basically white anyway, it's not as important as it would be if we had a contrasting color. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is fold this in half like this. Then we're going to fold it in half like this, just to give us a little seam, a little mark there. We're going to fold this half down, this half, I guess they're not halves, they're quarters. And we want to make sure that we've got them meeting real good at the point, because it's easy to get a gap in there. And that's probably not going to want to stay down real good until we get it all sewed in place. So let's do all 4 of these. Find my crease line, fold that down, fold that one down. If you want, you can iron one side at a time. Now, give it a really good steam. 2 more, and then we'll put the first row in place. now that we have those 4 done, if you see the diagonal lines, we're going to put all these in place on those diagonals with our center line here lining up with the up and down line. And you see why we needed that piece under there is in case we see daylight or something on these. Now I'm just going to put a little bit of glue. I want to make sure that this is lined up with this line, this is lined up with this line, and this is, and we really don't want to, well, yes, we can on this row. On another row, we don't want to tack the first part down, but I'll get to that. Okay, if they aren't meeting in all places, adjust them. Now this glue dries pretty fast, so I have to put more glue on if I don't get it down right the first time, but that doesn't hurt. Okay, I'm gonna give it an iron, but I don't want to iron out my other creases. Just wanting you to be able to see it laying flatter. Okay, this is the first row. Now, before we go on to the next row, I need to just fold all of these that same way. Everything except for our last 4 6-inch squares. All of these 5-inch squares are going to be ironed exactly the same way. So I'm going to put you on fast speed so we can get this done. Okay, now that we have all these folded into triangles, we're going to fold these 4 6-inch squares a little different. We're going to start out as a triangle, so we're going to fold it diagonally, and then in half this way. Then we're going to fold it down like this so that it makes a square instead of a triangle. Now we've only got 4 of those, so I'll sit here and do them, and maybe you'll catch on after I've done 4 of them. So even though they are folded a little different, they're still going to have a point that we're going to use in our star. sorry, I did that one wrong. Let's redo that one. Fold it diagonally first, then in half like that to get our crease. Okay, one more. Okay, these four are now squares. All the rest of these are triangles. And if you'll notice, all your raw edges are on one side. The other sides are folded edges. So let's go back to our star. Okay. This was the one I was using next. Now this one, it doesn't matter which one you start with, but we're going to move down about 3/8 of an inch. You can measure if you want. I like to eyeball. And once again, we want to make sure our center fold there is lined up with this fold, and that this point is lined up with the point above it. And actually, you don't want to glue this side down because we're going to go in a circle and end up there. I may have to change my glue here in a minute. So I'm about to run out. Now, we're not just going to do 4 like we did before. We're going to do 8. And we're going to line this one up here at the top with this line and with our folded line down here, and about 3/8 inch down. This one is going to line up here and here, about 3/8 inch down. Okay, another one in place, and we're going to go all the way around until we complete the circle. And then when we do our last one, and we line it up, we want to pick up the first one and lay it under it so it overlaps just like all the other ones do, and you can't tell where you started. Okay, that's row 1 done. Now we're going to do row 2, which is going to be a silver one. Let me just change out my glue stick here. Again, about 3/8 of an inch. You can probably see if you were using pins, this could get real bulky real quick. That's why I prefer the glue. Now I'm back at the beginning. So I'm going to put this one on and I'm going to lift the first tab here, and I'm going to have to re-glue it because my glue's already dried. Lay it back down. Now we have our second row in place. Now, it's actually the third row, if you include that first one. Now we're going to do the last row. And we're going to start with a triangle piece here that's, again, 3/8 down or so. And you'll notice there's extra here. That's intentional. We're going to cut this down to an 8-inch square. Now for the corners, we're going to use these square ones. And I'm always not only lining up my point here, but lining up my point down here with the crease we put in. And I'm back to the beginning again. Lift this, put a little more glue. It's not perfectly straight. Okay, this is our star. Now I'm going to take it over to the machine, and I'm going to use white thread because I don't want it to, well, it doesn't matter now. At this stage, it doesn't really matter, but you don't want your thread to show too much. But we want to try to sew in between these folds as best as we can. And we'll sew here, 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 and here. The 4 lines that we folded where we had our creases, and that's just going to be to hold it in place until we can quilt it. So let's go do that. Now we've got everything tacked into place by 4 cross lines. I'll iron it a little more just because I like to iron. Now the next thing we're going to do is put our Insel Bright or our batting, or because this is so many layers, I've made them without anything in there before, and they were still plenty thick. Okay, I've lined up, I've put my top that we have kind of basted in place, the Insel Bright, and then the backing with the right side to the bottom. Now this is where I'm going to use just a little bit of this 505 spray. Try not to overspray it because it gums up everything. Uh-oh, didn't get that on there straight. And you also don't want it a whole lot in one place. It will gum up your needle. But if you go lightly on it, it works really good. Okay, now I don't have to pin anything. Now I'm going to take it over to the machine and I'm going to go around all these points. I'm going to start here in the middle. There's only 4 points to go around there. And then I'm going to use white thread here, black thread here, white thread here, black thread here. So I'll do the whites first, then change my thread to black for these 2. And we're just going to stitch real close to the edge stitch it, top stitch it. I use those terms interchangeably. But that is going to quilt it, and we're going to have the pattern on our back. Now when I change to black thread to do these 2 rows, I'm going to leave my bobbin white because I want it to all be the same on the back and not to stand out. So my bobbin will be white on all of it. And I'll have a white top stitching on these 2 and a black top stitching on these 2. And if your tension is right on your machine, you won't see any of the black on the back. Okay, let's get that stitched. Now I've got my star all stitched down. I don't know how well it shows up on camera here, but as you can tell, everything is white on the back and you don't see any black thread. I do see one place that I kind of messed up a little bit in that this gets a little bit narrow right there, and this is a little wide. That should have been swung around a little bit more, but I didn't catch it in time. And people often ask me why I don't sell the samples I make for my videos, why I don't sell them on my Etsy shop, and this is why. When you're concentrating on making a video, you don't do your best work. And I would never try to sell anything that I didn't do my best work on. So occasionally you're gonna see me do things that I wouldn't do if I wasn't on camera. It's just my concentration's in the wrong place. Okay, we're getting real close now to being done. We want to cut this down to an 8-inch square. And I've got this real dark line here on my cutting board, and I'm going to line up this little flap here, you know, the center on both of these. And then I'm going to go over 4 inches, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to trim this side. Now this is really thick, so I'm not going to use my small blade for this. I'm going to bring out the big guns and see if I can get it with one cut. Yeah, that one did fine. Okay, trim the other side. I think I better turn it around this way so I am cutting at the right angle to cut it right. See, it was kind of slipping on me. Okay, now I'm going to do the same this way. Find my center. Go over 4 inches, 1, 2, 3, 4, and trim off the excess. Okay, now then all we have to do is put the binding and our little loop to hang it with. So we've done binding many times before, but I'll go over it briefly. And one of these days maybe I'll just make a video about doing bindings, because there's a lot of different ways to finish it off when you are joining the front and the beginning of it to the end of it. And I tried to do different ways on different videos so you learn them all, but it also might confuse people. So we're going to keep it kind of simple. We've got this strip that's 2.5 inches wide by the width of our fabric. And I'm ironing it in half so that it's 1.25 inches wide. I'm going to start on one of the sides, and we have plenty on this, so I'm going to leave a good 5-6 inches extra and just start here in the middle. Oops. I like to start mine on the back. So I'm going to start here. I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch seam, and I'm even going to use my 1/4 inch foot. I find that if I do that, it makes it nice and neat, and then when I turn everything to the other side, it's all an even width. So I'm going to sew down to here, and 1/4 inch before I get to this seam, I'm going to stop and back off. Then I'll turn this at a 90-degree angle on the corner so that the fold is right here at this corner. Then I turn it back on top of itself so that this is parallel with what I just sewed, and this is parallel with this side, and I start 1/4 inch in because we don't want to catch that seam that we just put, or that fold, and then I'm going to stitch all the way down here, back off after 1/4 inch, turn it at a 90-degree angle, fold it back on top of itself so that it's parallel with this side and the fold is parallel with this side, and we're going to go all the way around. Then when we get back to this side where we've started here in the middle, I'm just going to sew a little bit. I'm going to turn the corner and sew just a little bit. Then I'm going to take these two, and somewhere in the middle, I'm going to measure it where they come together, and I'm going to cut both of them so that there's just 1/4 inch extra than where they meet. So here's where they meet. I'm going to cut both of them right here. Then I will open them up to sew that 1/4 inch seam, then fold it back and go back and finish the seam. Now, a little hint, it's a whole lot easier to do if you have some space between where you started and where you're doing your seam. It's hard to open it up if you're opening it up way back here where you started. So I try to find a place in the middle of where I stopped on each side so that it'll be easier to open up and sew. Okay, let's get that done. Now I turn the binding all towards the front. I'm going to get a bunch of clips, trim off any loose threads, and I'm going to fold this to the front, and I'm going to use the flat side of this clip on the top. And when I get to the corners, I'm going to miter them, and I miter them by pushing that down completely flat and then pulling it back over. And they should come together. I always have to adjust them when I'm at the machine, but they work just fine. It's just hard to hold them in place with a clip. Now I'm going to change my thread to a red thread so it's not real obvious that it's been stitched there, but I'm still going to leave a white on the bottom because if you can tell, this laps over more than it does on the back. So my seam's going to come out on this side of my red line. So I want it to be white so it doesn't show too much either. Now we're going to stitch this. Then we're going to take our 1 inch by 4 inch piece, fold the sides in, and then fold it again down the middle so we have just a 1/4 inch piece. And I'm going to stitch it with my red thread all the way down. Then I will put right sides together, and right sides are the one with the red thread because I'm still going to have white in my bobbin. I'm going to sew a little 1/4 inch seam right there, then turn it inside out so that the seam is hidden in there, and then I'll stitch it right across there, hiding that seam. And I like to do mine on a corner. You can do it in the center if you want, however you want to display yours. But I'm going to do all that at the machine. Okay, I'm sorry, but I think I lost the sewing coverage. My camera is shutting down. It's getting too hot or something, my camera by my sewing machine. So I just top stitched around here, and I put my loop here after I stitched it the way I told you I was going to. And now I have a set of 2 pot holders. And like I said, these are very, very thick. You can use them for a pot holder, but I prefer to use these kind as trivets and just set a hot dish on them or a hot pan if I use them at all, because a lot of times I just like them to hang up and be pretty. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial and you learned something from it. I apologize for the not being able to watch me stitch the binding. It seems like it always happens on the binding that I lose some coverage. So I will probably have to make just a plain binding video one of these days. But our next video is going to be a table runner. I have, I think, 4 more Christmas projects, and then we'll switch to making Christmas gifts. I have a lot of ideas for some real easy and some kind of medium degree of difficulty, but so you can gift something that is handmade and with a lot of love in it, and it saves you money usually. Okay, thank you for joining me today. Tune in Saturday, and hopefully I will have the video on the table runner up then. Remember, whatever you do, do it to the glory of the Lord.